Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. Welcome to the first session of IWCC Creative Curve series. This series is geared towards our lives beyond cinematography and to help us make informed choices towards our own well-being. Here today we have with us clinical psychologist Jane Baker. Jane is a licensed clinical psychologist in India under the Rehabilitation Council of India. She has worked with people across age groups, which include children, adolescents, and adults. Jane has an MA and an MPhil in clinical psychology. She is here to help us understand on how to be kind to your mind through clarity and empowerment. Thank you so much, Jane, for being here. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Akansha. I really hope that I can answer everybody's questions and really guide you all. So I have put on certain subtopics in this presentation. So the first one would be on stress, okay? And I would be explaining about what is eustress and distress. And then next we would go into negotiation skills and how it's very important because we negotiate in every aspect of our life, be it our personal life, be it even our work, right? So then certain guidelines we could follow on the set when it comes to gender discrimination, which is very much rampant. I think a lot of you have experienced it as well. The next topic, which I really find is very important, is being assertive. It comes under communication skills, and I really think being assertive is very important. And why aren't we being assertive is something which we need to discover for ourselves. So are we passive? Are we passive aggressive? Are we aggressive? Or are we assertive? Okay, and this thing applies to all the situations in our life. We'll be discussing more about it, and I'll be answering some questions relevant to that. The other part is about how do you handle boundaries, what are healthy boundaries, what are unhealthy boundaries, and what are porous boundaries, right? So I'll be discussing something about that, and then taking it ahead with empowering women. Okay, that is each other. We need to empower each other, even in the workplace, even beyond the workplace, and reach out in every way that we can. The last thing, which I really feel is very important, is also about our mental health. And I really think mental health is important for each and every person. And a lot of us are not aware about what is happening with us. So we may have certain types of symptoms like anxiety symptoms, or we may be feeling low and we may not understand where it's coming from. So since depression is very common, everybody assigns the title to themselves. So the other thing which I really thought about discussing also is about the stages of change. So if you're aware about something you need to work on, okay, on a personal basis, then there is something what I call a trans-theoretical, process of change. So it's a model, and it's about where you are at each part of the change process. All right. So I'll be starting off now with stress. We all experience stress in our life, right? Like right now, even we are experiencing stress. It could be a good stress, it could be a negative type of stress. So stress is very much important in our life, and we should not always say it very negatively. Stress actually pushes us towards doing things. So this type of stress that pushes you towards doing things is called eustress. Okay, it's a positive type of stress. If you do not get a push, you will not experience it. For example, if you are receiving a promotion at work, or you're celebrating something, so that is a type of excitement that you feel inside yourself. So that's when you're promoted, you're getting a new responsibility now, and that thing holds a lot of privileges, but also there is a lot at stake. Okay, you have to manage a lot of people, maybe, as in, as women cinematographers, when you're handling a team, you have to handle so many different type of people, and as you go ahead in your career, you have to handle new things that come to you, right? So that's a type of eustress. Now there is a second type of stress that is general, and it's very negative. It can affect you. Stress is called distress. And when you are in this loop of stress for a very long period of time, and you are not finding ways to cope with it effectively, it's going to affect you physically, of course, right? And it's also going to affect you emotionally, psychologically. All right. So we need to understand what we're experiencing as women from time to time, and how is it affecting us? How is it affecting our decisions, our life, our goals, our plans, So there could be situations that could lead to stress. We need to be aware what are they, and these things are called stressors, right? We need to be aware of what are these stressors, and if we are not able to deal with them effectively, we need to find solutions to the same. The next thing which I'm going ahead and I'll be discussing with you is about negotiation skills. Now, a couple of you, and I've discussed with Gautami, I discussed with Fauziya, and I realized one thing, that this is also what's important. They also emphasized it, that it's better to discuss about negotiation. Negotiation is also very important because even as women, we negotiate every day, being it buying some vegetables, being it, discussing something with our family when it comes to making life decisions, life goals. So we need to negotiate our way. It even comes to our work, when it comes to what we really deserve. Okay, so you guys as women cinematographers, are you really asking for what you deserve when it comes to pay, what you deserve when it comes to your workspace, how it's supposed to be? Or do you just go with the flow and passively just accept anything that's thrown your way and deal with it? So we need to learn to negotiate, and negotiation does not always come with pre-planning. Sometimes yes, it would come when you know that you have a project at hand and you need to negotiate it. All right, you need to negotiate what's your salary and what are your expectations. Also, we need to take into consideration the budget of the film, right? So if you have to negotiate your way through a project, you need to know, okay, what are my resources, what are my skills, what I really am expecting, what am I gaining also from this project? Am I gaining something, or I'm just doing it for the monetary aspect of it? So I really have to sit and think about this thing. We negotiate even in our personal relations. We decide about what we will do in a day, what our partners will do, what our family members will do. We negotiate space also sometimes. So negotiation is a skill. It's not that only you need to use it in the workplace, you can use it even with your friends. Okay, so there is also a give and take to negotiation, right? So if you are going for a new project and people are telling you that, okay, they are going to pay you this much. Now, even though if you're going to be negotiating yourself, how do you exactly do that? Are you putting yourself up in a favorable light, or you are just accepting anything, or are you being overtly very aggressive also, that no, this is what I deserve and this is what I'm going to take? And maybe you might be a little verbally abusive also. Sometimes we need to know that we need to handle our emotions also during such negotiations. Even though you know what you deserve, maybe the opposite person may not, or even the opposite person may know but is trying to shift the budget somewhere. So we need to know what type of negotiator we are. Okay, are we only compromising, and are we only seeing the futuristic relation that you're going to share with the persons who are handling the project, maybe the producer, the director? Are you really asking for what is due to you, or are you taking a back step? So you really need to think about this, because if you just make decisions sometimes, and those decisions lead to certain outcomes which are not favorable to you, such as you're not getting paid for the work, or you're not doing much about that, or you're waiting for the other person to reciprocate, then you're losing out a lot. So also asserting yourself is very important in such a situation. Negotiation is a type of communication skill. It requires even persuasion, where you are telling the person that yes, this is what I deserve, and also I'm respecting you from where you're coming from, and I can understand what are your needs and what are your requirements, and I'm able to fulfill both the needs and requirements. This is very important to put ahead. And then also about asking about the salary. Is it fitting in their budget? Is it not fitting in their budget? Is it something you want to go ahead with? All right, it's all a decision making process that you will only learn sometimes when you are in it, or when you form a support group of other women cinematographers and you discuss the issue and come up with a solution. Keep a standardized budget in hand all the time before you approach another producer or anybody for another project. Because if you're not clear about what you are asking, sometimes you may ask lesser than what you really deserve, and then you will regret it, and then you will be in a thought loop which I call rumination. So you are just mentally churning out the event in your mind, that I could have done this differently, maybe if I would have said this differently, things would have been different, maybe if I would have asked more, he would have given me. So sometimes it's better to know the opposite party also when you are negotiating. Get to know the information, get to know the budget, get to know what will be expected from you, is also very, very much important. And then balance the pros and cons and see what is the cost benefit in this, whether it's beneficial to you or if it's not. This brings me to the next important topic, which is on assertiveness, after which I'll also be discussing about gender discrimination, which I really find is a very important thing. And also to understand what it is, because if you're not aware, then you are at a loss, okay, and your rights are being misused. Being assertive means You are somebody who is bringing your words, your thoughts, your emotions in a much more balanced way and putting it ahead to the other person in a way the other person understands it. Okay, being assertive doesn't mean that you're being aggressive. Being assertive means you're standing up for what you believe in. Being assertive means what you are really experiencing and how you put that experience in words, be it your emotions, your thoughts, and you're putting it ahead. A lot of women are very passive, okay, when it comes to explaining yourself, asking what your rights are. And then it could be a project to project basis thing where you are asking about what you really deserve, asking that in the way that you should. Maybe you're not being that overt about it. Maybe you are thinking that you will lose a project because if you ask more you will not get it. Sometimes because of this reasons people understand that okay, if I call her for the next project, for this project she has agreed for a lesser pay, and I'm also very aware that it's at a lesser rate, okay, than what's in the market also. Now she's agreed for this, so next time if I'm working with her she will agree for this type of rate, or maybe I will add only a little more on top. Sometimes it's about just asserting what it is instead of being passive, instead of accepting just everything. Yes, people do have budget, they do have their own things that they have to complete, but you are actually the type of person who is going to make it happen. You are a cinematographer, you are playing a very big role in this, and without you how is a film going to happen? Don't be passive about it. Ask what is due to you based on your skills, and yes, see if what is the standardized rate in the market and do ask for it. And even if you don't get it, see your other options. Don't just think that this project was so important enough that without doing it you can't do any other thing. You have to move ahead and you have to take up new projects. So the next thing is about being aggressive. There could be people whom with you are negotiating with who could be aggressive, it could be very vocal, very rude, very, they may say that no, you don't have all these skills, and you don't have this much experience, and you don't have this and that and this. So they have a list, but they are still negotiating with you, right? So they're trying to maybe find a way to get you to accept the offer by putting these things on your plate, that maybe because of which you will start feeling that, oh, you were there, right? I've not done these many projects for this thing. But what about your skills? And what are you offering? And if they are actually calling you, then they have seen something in you, right? So finding a way, understanding who the producer is, who's the director, and just actually finding out more before you voice what your budget is. So suppose they say the budget is around 1 lakh, for example. So the budget cannot increase more than 1.25 or 1.50. So having this idea in your mind, maybe if it's for a few days project, understanding what else it could be, and then asking the right rate. Because asking what is due to you is important, because the next time you are called for work, they will know what you're going to ask. They will not expect something lesser than a certain margin from you. This is also one thing. And the other thing about communication skills is that some people are very passive aggressive. Okay, you will see them a lot maybe in the industry and even off the industry. Maybe it could be your neighbors, a couple of people you have seen doing this, and maybe even you're doing this at certain times because you're not aware about what it is. All right. So being passive aggressive means on the surface you're very passive. You are accepting all the shouts from them. You're accepting everything. You are even accepting a lower pay. You are even accepting such threats and demands from them when you're on the project. And then you are not doing anything about it. You are actually talking behind their back. You are rumoring about it. You're gossiping about it. Sometimes when you feel like you are helpless and you're stuck and somebody is trying to be very overbearing, that's the time you need to take a stand and you need to do something about it. And that is to tell them how you exactly feel. So assertiveness, why is it important? And how do you be assertive in some situations? There are certain things which you could practice with your friends, with your family members on how to be assertive. It could be a role play also. It could be certain statements that you're going to be using while you are negotiating, also while you're discussing something with your colleagues or somebody in the workspace. The negotiation could be your boundaries also, your workspace, your timings. It could be anything, as well as standing up for it. Probably using more I statements, like I feel this when you do that, or can we discuss this at a later time, or can we take a time out when you're calmer, then we'll discuss it, if it's an aggressive person. Or if it's a passive person who is not responding and is taking everything, even when you are talking, even when you're handling a team, then telling them this, that see, when you are not talking about something that you're going through, this thing is going to continue. Okay, and you're going to be feeling like this for a long time. So I really expect you to speak about that thing, how you feel about maybe certain things on the set, or some issues that they're facing in the workspace. So try not to use you statements, because you statements tend to have more of a blaming attitude, where the person feels that, okay, they are blaming me. While using I statements, it's more of a stand where you are acknowledging that you're the one experiencing the feelings, you're the one having those thoughts, you're the one responding or reacting. So this is very important. All right. So it's good to respond in situations. It's not helpful to react. Okay. And mostly passive people tend to have an outburst. It's just like a pressure cooker, things keep happening with you over a long period of time, and then you have a blast, and then you feel guilty for that. When experiencing an emotional outburst is so natural for every single person, right? Understanding where it comes from, why did it happen, is very important, and also working on it. Now, next thing which I wanted to discuss is about healthy boundaries also. A lot of us are aware about the space between us and others being taken over by others at times. So what do we do about it? And this happens in the workspace. So while you're working in the workspace that you are, there could be new people that you don't know about. And there could be some negative experiences that would come under gender discrimination also. Maybe somebody is actually discriminating because you are a woman, because you're a lady. You're a woman, so I'm going to give you this pay. Or because you're a mother, I'm going to be giving you this pay. Or, maybe you're not suitable for the job. These are these type of reasons that come ahead. When you feel this, then you need to stand up and talk about it. You need to discuss it. You need to assert it. If you are experiencing such a kind of thing, go and talk to the director directly that this is happening with you, with a member in the team. Because if you don't do it, the person will think that you will never do it and take action again. Many of you experience situations where you go on a project and you are actually trying to figure out the locations and trying to see if that thing really fits in the type of film shoot or what you are doing. Okay. So many times people take advantage of that and take you to places, and then after that they will call you for something else, and then you are taken by surprise. So if you don't know a person, I would suggest this, that you take a back step. This is to answer your questions, because what happens is that many times you feel that that person may not be having those thoughts or those intentions towards you, but is it harmful to even think that if they do have it, then I'm keeping myself safe and I'm keeping myself aware also about my personal space. Okay. So you need to be very careful about this. Just because people are behaving very calmly, very sweetly with you, and they want to learn about your life story and your struggles and your passions and all that, does not mean that they really care about you. Sometimes they are doing it for other reasons which you don't know. Maybe they're trying to find your weak points. Maybe they may harm you in a certain way which you don't know. So understanding this and realizing that not all situations are in your control, but there are certain things you can do to manage such situations, such as don't go alone to such kind of places. And if somebody is trying to connect with you on a more personal basis, on a professional level, try to take a back step and tell them that. Make them much aware that this is not who I am, and I have other work to do also. You could even say this in a calmer way with them. I have other works to do also. So once we're done with this, maybe we could get back. Or maybe if you're in such a situation and you're stuck, maybe you're giving a phone call to someone and telling them that you are here and what you're doing. So this is about being safe. The other thing is about your personal safe, which is a physical distance, which is something you need to be aware of and maintain. You can think of it, if you keep your arm out, the distance between you and the arm is like the distance between the distance that others should maintain with you when you're on a set. And you have to be very vocal about it. You have to be very, very straight about it. It's not about being very, no, please stand over there or something. No, this is my personal space. You keep your distance, and so will I. It's better to be that way with some people who don't understand it. Some people who are, like I say, when you are in a toxic workspace, you may meet such kind of people who may invalidate you or take over your personal space, to intimidate you also. So you need to be very vocal, very assertive, not reactive and abusive. The other thing you need to do is to find out the people around you who will be there to support you. because it's not always the people who you may really expect to do that. So knowing who's around you is very important. Who will be there to help you in such a situation is very important. To address gender discrimination is very important, because if you don't do that, you as a human being is actually self-sabotaging yourself. You actually really letting the abuse continue. And we are very well aware of what's physical abuse, but what is emotional abuse? Are we aware of that? Are we aware of what we are going through after such a type of event? Are you aware that you are having a lot of feelings, a lot of emotions which are so painful? Maybe that event happened 5 years ago, but you're still feeling it today. So understanding that you are important, you are a human being who deserves much more than just being quiet. You need to take a stand and stand up for yourself. If you're not able to do that, you need to talk to someone about it. Talk to somebody who you trust, not talk to anybody who you think can be a friend on a whenever you are on a new project also. Because I know a lot of ladies who are new in this industry are not aware of people, and they go through such kind of experiences. So I really feel it strongly that you stand up for such things, or you support each other. All right, that is how you will be empowering each other as well. I really feel that as a group of women cinematographers, if it's possible, you can create a buddy system. A buddy is whom, it could be a colleague also, or it could be somebody you know personally, or some senior also, okay, who has been in this field from a very long time, and you know that person, you trust them. So, or you can develop a relation with that person. You're comfortable. You know that person will understand you and actually guide you much better. It's better to have a buddy who can actually listen to you and guide you in such a situation also. Because I'm somewhere feeling that they have actually crossed a lot of paths where they have experienced this, and this thing could actually help you. So yes, creating a buddy system, or creating a group of 5 people each, where maybe one of you are a senior and you really can actually guide someone. In this, probably you can just lend a ear. Just lend a ear to just listen to somebody. Many times, a lot of women cinematographers, they go through experiences and they're very passive. It could be that they're even touched by a male figure. They will not even speak about it. They are so shocked that they are like so static that they can't believe this happened to them. Now, how are you going to talk about this? You need to talk about it. You need to respond at that time only. But if you're not able to respond and now you're going through some trauma because of that type of experience, what are you doing? Do you have somebody you can share with? Are you sharing with your parents? Or whom are you sharing with? Are you developing a support system? Is there a support system for you? Are there people also who have experienced it? There are many people who have experienced it, and they will actually stand up with you. Maybe to even face that person who will be next time scared of even touching you, So I just thought this was very important. This should be done. Because if it's not done, there are a lot of people who are very quiet about it. And then maybe after 5 to 10 years, or when they come to a therapist, then they discuss it. And nobody knows about the struggle that they're going through. They're struggling alone, they're surviving, and they're in pain. And this thing affects their work also. Then they go into depression or anxiety, and it's not their fault, right? They are struggling with so much, and then they struggle with more. So I would also tell you, whoever's asked this question, to go ahead and actually respond to it. Do not keep it to yourself. Do that for yourself. You are important. Your rights are important. You have to go and stand up to it. And if it's something that he's doing wrong to you, then you have to be vocal about it. When you're being vocal about it, it could be that there are people in the past also who have experienced it, who will come and stand with you. Or maybe they may not, but you have voiced it. No, now this person is scared. Oh, this lady has voiced it. Now, if I'm doing something, I'll be in problem. Okay, so even if it's affecting you so much, if the discrimination is so bad and there is any abuse happening in the process, you need to take a stand and you need to approach law for that. You have to do it. Somewhere I feel the group of women cinematographers should have somebody who can maybe advocate for them on a legal way. Somebody who really is also a woman cinematographer. Because I know that they, like, as women, you guys have 2 or 3 things that you develop on, or somebody who can help you. It could be a family member also. Maybe you could use that family member to help someone else who's going through that. Somebody who will be very accepting of it. Somewhere you need to take a stand and then tell that person that if you're going to continue doing this, this is what I'm going to give you. The other thing which I wanted to discuss also is about mental health and anxiety and also depression. So what happens with, we all are very unique, we all are very different, we all have a certain genetic, or you can say a biological predisposition to develop something, be it a medical illness, be it a psychological illness. Now these two things depend upon the environment that we're in. If the environment is very supportive, like while you're growing up, you're being very supported by your family members, by the community, by the place where you are, then you will be having a much more balanced view of something. But if you had a traumatic event, and that traumatic event has certain unresolved issues, now those unresolved issues will come up at certain point in your life, and it would affect you. You can't always repress how you would feel about those things. It could be a death of a loved one. It could be loss, any type of loss. It could be maybe a very shameful incident, an embarrassment, which still keeps you up at times thinking about it. It could be anything. All right. See, since each and every one of you are very different, you all would feel it differently, you would experience it differently. Your world is very different from others. And hence, since it's happening with you, you need to take a step ahead and understand what it is. What is anxiety? What is depression? Apart from this, also there are other type of disorders. But since these two are very common, it's very important. There were these statistics done in 2017 also in India, where they found that there are 43 million people in the country who are suffering from anxiety or depression. So now you see the numbers are so huge. You are not alone even if you're feeling it. And that does not mean that you will be feeling it forever. All right. Experiencing anxiety and depression is the most painful thing a person can go through emotionally, because maybe your physical wounds may heal, but you're still somewhere from inside, trying to survive, express yourself, share it with someone. But that thing is not stopping, right? You're in a loop somewhere. So that loop is something which I would call rumination, which I discussed before. So where you are thinking of the past outcomes and you're thinking, why did this happen to me? What did I do to deserve this type of thing? Did I do anything bad? No, right? Even if you made mistakes, you're still learning from that. So in rumination is normal also, but rumination can be very unhelpful also. The helpful side of rumination is where when you ask yourself how questions, when you try to find solutions, okay, these are the thoughts coming in my mind. Have I found a solution to it, or I'm still in that stage where I'm asking myself why? Okay. Trying to find solutions to whatever happens to you, whatever happens to your loved ones, your friends is very also important. That's where you're empowering maybe your co-workers who are also women. Okay. Many of the times what happens is that there is not a proper support system for women, and now because of this issue you don't have anyone to discuss anything with, or you may have people but they may not really understand where you come from, so they may invalidate you and tell you that don't talk about this, okay, this is happening so many years ago, don't do it, or don't be a crybaby, you're an adult now, you have to handle things on your own. So many times people do this because they are not aware, especially family members. They don't know what world of experiences, your emotions, what's happening with you. Okay. So understanding that there is a level at which everyone can really support you, guide you, understand what you're going through, and find that support system who can when it comes to these issues. It's not to cut off from your family or your friends who can't. Maybe there's another way to explain them things, and they will definitely understand, because sometimes we don't communicate in a way that they understand. We communicate in the way that expresses our pain. All right. See, one thing which I would really suggest for anyone out there is that yes, a therapist may charge more. So you need to see if a person is even a licensed professional. Okay. And it's important to go to a licensed professional, and because this person has all the training, the experience, and can really help you out. There are a lot of people on the internet who are charging a bomb, and they are not licensed, they are not registered, and they are just performing therapy and they don't know what they're doing. So I've had a lot of clients even coming to me, and they have been to so many places, and they have been, I don't even know what therapy they have done. like they have gone through, because from what I could see, it's not therapy at all. Maybe the therapist is becoming so friendly that they're going out together, and I don't know. So yes, you have to probably negotiate maybe with the therapist that, see, I can't afford so much, but I really want your service, and could it be this much? See, for certain things, what I really think, what should be happening, I'll give you an idea what happens in therapy. Okay, so you want to go into therapy, but before you go into therapy, the therapist would actually understand your case. The therapist would take a complete, very comprehensive case history about you, about all your details. Then they would actually understand your symptoms, each of your symptoms, be it even your panic attacks, be it anxiety, be it breathlessness. How long have you been experiencing this is very, very important. Apart from this, what situations you experience. So we develop a whole case of yours. Then we also understand your personal history. We also understand your family history. We understand if there is anything at home, are there any legal issues, so many other things, because every single person who comes to us is very unique. We cannot put the same sort of therapy on every single person. In India, like, since we are very unique, we are more emotional beings. There are more emotional disorders in India. A lot of therapists use certain therapies that do not work. So a lot of therapists decide ki, okay, I'm going to give you 5 sessions, or I'm going to give you 10 sessions, and within these sessions I will, we'll work together and then see. But the therapist doesn't see if you really need that, or they don't try and see, they don't try to work therapy with you to see where it's going. So a therapist should sit with you and tell you what type of session is going to happen, and what you should expect from it. Because being very much aware of your about the mental health act also, which is out there, you can read the mental health act online also, which explains that, explains all the details about, what is about what's mental health, why is it so important, what are your rights as a patient. Today's generation, nobody can pick you up and put you in a mental institute claiming that you're having an issue without your consent for any treatment. So is a therapist taking consent from you? Is a therapist, before going through therapy, after understanding your case, is the therapist actually providing you certain psychometric assessments, some assessments that could actually show you that, look, this is there, and are those valid assessments, or is it from the internet? What is it? So is the therapist giving you a report also, telling you about what is happening with you and why it's happening to you? Sometimes being aware of it is very important. Then going ahead with the therapy. The therapy should be focused on your needs. It should not be just a CBT or REBT or a DBT, any that type of therapy. It should be something that's specific to you. And even if you can't do a certain type of therapy, there should be a much more of a multimodal approach. If XYZ is a patient coming to me, and now I'm seeing the case this way, I will not just put a therapy on that person. I will see the person's strengths, weaknesses, I'll see the other aspects, and then I will tell that person that what you really require is this type of thing. You just don't need CBT. You need maybe something in mindfulness also. Maybe you need something in a bit of dialectical behavior therapy. Maybe you need some interpersonal relation, some therapy on, these type of aspects like distress tolerance. Okay, you need some skills. So being aware of this thing, being safe with the therapist is also very important. Otherwise, there are people who go to many therapists, and then there is no beneficial. There are people who are going for hypnotherapy, and I don't know why people go for hypnotherapy unless they have a certain type of mental illness because of which they need it. Now hypnotherapy has become so popular, there are people doing courses of it. Is there any regulation? No. So we need to be aware that if you go to a RCA licensed professional who is under the Rehabilitation Council of India, you will be getting somebody who is going to be very serious about your case, who is not just going to keep calling you for sessions and earning something from it, but is going to be giving you something out of the session, who is going to make you self-reliant. This is what you need to become. You need to become a self-therapist. You should be able to be aware of yourself. You should be able to be aware of somebody else going through something like that. So this should be the goal of therapy, not that you will be going from therapist to therapist and you may not be knowing what's going to happen in the next session. You have no goals, you have no outcomes, so you will keep coming for the session and you'll be being there and you'll be discussing your issues and they will understand your issues and they will say something to you. That's not therapy. Therapy is a very systematic process that happens. And if there is something, while there is a homework session given to you, you're not able to do it, then the therapist also will sit with you and ask you why it didn't happen. It will not be, okay, fine, I'm getting one more session now. No, the therapist's goal is to make you as balanced as possible as soon. So don't just go to anyone. And secondly, if you may need a clinical psychologist or maybe a counselor, that is also dependent on your case. Okay. So then you may need counseling. You may not need a clinical psychologist. You may need somebody who can address your personal life issues, you know, or simple issues. You need a clinical psychologist when you're going through something much more stronger and you can't do anything about it. Then you need somebody. So understanding who you need to go to, and yes, of course, telling them what you can afford, what you can't afford is also very important. Maybe you may not work with a therapist, but maybe the therapist can refer you somebody who really can work with you. You know, just don't stop or don't give up on that thing because of this. Because if you are approaching a good therapist and you have a budget or you have certain things and maybe you can't pay for the fees, it's okay, but get the treatment. This is what I would suggest. The next thing also which I want to tell you is about, you know, many times clinical psychologists and psychiatrists, we work together. Okay, the psychiatrist may prescribe some medications to you, and that would be because your symptoms are very high or because you are not ready to go into therapy. So he is helping you by prescribing medications that are creating some changes in you. So so if you're having depression, then maybe serotonin is low, so serotonin starts increasing, so it works on your neuroreceptors in your brain. A clinical psychologist works in therapy, and it's very, very effective. The therapy is very effective. Why? Because just like the medications are actually creating changes in you, therapy is creating changes in you. Imagine this one thing: if you are ready to do self work, but you don't know how to do self work, then you need to go to a therapist. If you are doing a lot of homework also in the sessions and you're coming back to the therapist and you're completing your work, like whatever is there, and you're being a part of the therapy, then you don't need many sessions, because in those number of sessions, even before the number of sessions told to you, you will be fine. Okay, you don't have to be dependent. So yes, approaching a therapist, telling them that you can't afford their services or something is completely okay. Maybe they could refer someone to you. So that's something which you should actually seek. Instead of, you know, if you go online, you will see a lot of platforms offering therapy and all. Now, a person who has a PhD in psychology or an MA in psychology, but not an MPhil in clinical psychology that's under the RCI, does not have the required amount of training and experience to work with you. A person with a PhD just has a thesis, it's a research. They have not actually actively worked with patients. You know, they're not got the training to work with patients. So even if the person with an MA has very few, maybe there are 5 cases or 10 cases they've handled, how are they going to work with your case? And what if they're giving you the wrong treatment then? In my experience, I've seen working across, I've seen that there are certain psychologists also, or you know, people who are not even psychiatrists or even medical professionals prescribing medications. Now that's very illegal. If it happens to you, happens to anyone, please approach the court. That person will be behind bars because that person is giving you something that's actually harming you. Okay, and you don't know what it is. Please take a step and do something about it. There are people in Mumbai doing that. There are people all around doing that. So being aware about what are your rights, what is available around you, the people around you, the support system, the right people in this professional line, approach them. If it's not working out, then it's okay also. They will actually either reduce the cost seeing your case, or they will refer you to someone else. That's the max thing. But do not deny yourself anything. This is what I would suggest. And just don't go for any online free therapies, because I don't know if someone is doing it genuinely or not. So they might be also, they might not be. So the other thing, please check their credentials. If they have a license, they will have a license number. Go on the RCI page, check if they have a license number, see if it's renewed, it's not renewed, or they're just practicing without the number anymore. Like their license is expired. For us, it's a 5-year period now within which our license expires. Then the government checks on us. So you need to check that also before you go for therapy. Because in India, I know there are a lot of people, going ahead for therapy and then there's no effect. They're getting much worse after going into hypnotherapy also. And you will not believe the case. If they are in depression, they go into hypnotherapy, things increase. They don't know. It may not work for everyone. That's what I want to just say. There could be a certain therapy that's effective for someone. Maybe a type of therapy is effective for somebody. Maybe hypnotherapy is effective for somebody who's having a different type of illness, like I would call dissociation. Okay. So maybe dissociative identity disorder or the like. So each therapy is very unique. Each person is very unique. And you need to know that if you're going to a therapist, you need to ask a lot of questions also about why you need therapy, and see your reports, see if what they're offering you, and get the best benefit out of it, because that's your right. The other thing which I wanted to discuss is about something which I call the stages of change. Okay, so we all go through a stage of change in our life. It starts with pre-contemplation. Then next is contemplation. Then next is when you're preparing yourself. That is preparation. Then is action. Then after that is maintenance, and then is termination or relapse. So I'll be explaining each of these things. When you are aware that there is something you need to work on yourself, it could be being assertive, it could be about negotiating, it's about even your mental health, okay, which you need to balance out. It could be your workspace, your family life. So there is something first which comes with awareness. Okay, I know something is happening, right? If you're not aware, then you are in a pre-contemplation stage. Okay, maybe there are people telling you about it, but you are in denial. You're not accepting it. You're not accepting that, okay, I'm going through anxiety, or I'm going through a depressive episode and I need to do something about it. Or I'm going through some sort of emotional abuse or some baggage inside me, and I'm not doing something about it because I'm choosing to repress it and deny it. Maybe denying it will work for me for a certain while, but I'm going to try. And you're very confident also about it. But you know that now and then there are these bursts, right? And it's affecting you emotionally. It's affecting you probably in your workspace also. So it's to be aware. The next step is contemplation, where you are contemplating. So what do I do about this now? What are the solutions? What are the changes I need to make? So you are deciding now that, okay, I need to decide the pros and cons to it. I need to work on it. Is working on it helping me, or suppressing it is helping me? So you will be seeing the cost benefit in it. You will realize that at a point of time that I need to work on it. I can't keep prolonging this, because if I don't work on it, it's going to continue. I need to take action for myself. Because like you all know about how a cavity feels, right? Everybody must have had an experience of a cavity. Now if you seal the cap of a cavity without really going to a dentist and drilling it, or trying other type of remedies which may not even help, maybe it's a root canal. So if you're going to if you're go to a dentist and a dentist just seals the top of it, what's going to happen? On the top it looks normal, on below it it's still paining you, and you know it. So it's about self-work, about working on what are your deep rooted issues, what you're going through, and then taking action. All right. Then the next stage would be actually preparing about how will you take action. Okay, if it's about being assertive, how will you be assertive? How are you going to be assertive in the situation? How are you going to practice assertiveness? What if even thinking of an event where you need to practice assertiveness is bringing out anxiety and you're scared about it? So what do you do? So you need to do certain role plays. You need to discuss with your family and friends about what's happening, and you need to have some sort of role play happening. And you may even notice that you're feeling anxious during that time. You may feel like you are just rigid and you are not getting either the thoughts that you really need. You're not getting the words that you need to speak, feeling a high level of anxiety, or you're feeling scared. Okay, so practicing it is also very important. Just like any skill in our life that we develop, even as a skill as you guys develop as cinematographers, the more experience you get, you're developing yourself, right? So the same way, develop yourself in another way, develop your emotional base. All right, and when you do so, you will find yourself effectively dealing with situations. Many times dealing with the situation when it comes actually helps. It helps you build resilience. Resilience means what? It's an ability to bounce back. You have decided that you're going to do something, and maybe when that situation is coming and somebody's trying to dominate you or threaten you or affect you in some way, then next time you will be like, this is not something which I'm going to work with. If you're talking to me properly or behaving with me properly, then do so. Otherwise, I have other things to do. Or you lessen your volume lessen the way you're talking, the volume, the pitch, the tone. Or let's or just become a little calm and then get back to me and then talk to me. This is very important to do. Do not be in a situation and handle everything and accept everything. Not everything you accept is good. Okay. And then in this way, actually, you're validating the person who need to do more to you, which is more dangerous. Okay. Then, yeah. So the next stage after that is action. After preparation, you have realized that I need to start doing it, and I've started preparing for it. I've talked to my family. I've done something about it. Now I'm preparing my role play and I'm doing it. Okay. The next thing is also about now action. Are you really doing it when it really is required, or are you taking a back step? What happened to you during that? What were the thoughts going on in your mind? It's very good to be self-aware at times. Being self-aware is going to help you work on yourself more. Even if you do not, even if you're unable to be assertive in that situation and you're being passive or you're being passive aggressive, understand that there is something that still needs to be done. There is some self-work that still needs to be done. You can't always be assertive in front of an aggressive person, right? The person has to calm down first. So if you feel your emotions are increasing, now you're feeling more anxious, then you take a back step for yourself and wait for the person to reach out to you, which they definitely will. Okay. Then we have after action, then we have maintenance also, where you're maintaining that type of behavior across situations. So you're being assertive with everyone. You're telling everybody that, okay, if it's my workspace, if it's my work timings, if it's my schedule, even during this COVID-19 situation, if you might be at home or you're staying with your relatives or your friends or you're staying alone. So when you're working, how long you're working, how much time you need to give to it, how much time you need to give to yourself is something which you need to decide. And you need to be more aware of. Because you are as equal to anybody. You are as important as anybody else. And you need to give yourself that. And you need to make others aware of it. Nobody's going to feel bad about it. People who really love and respect you will actually accept that you really need it, and they would be happy that you're actually doing it. Okay. So do it for the people who actually care about you rather than those who you're working with or those people who are putting you down. After maintenance, there could be a situation where you're either terminating certain behaviors which you used to do, where you used to be passive, or you never used to use negotiation skills, or you never stood up for yourself. So in this stage, maybe you may revert also to the first type of behaviors which you used to do, where you used to be passive. That also could happen. It's better to be aware that when such a situation happens in my future, it could be the same like how I responded in my past. So it's to be prepared. All right. It's not about always going back and understanding also, okay, fine, I did it this time, but now the next time I meet the person, I'm going to correct myself. I'm going to correct them. All right. Apart from this, I just wanted to know, is there anything else, Akansha, that I've missed out, or you feel I need to discuss, or anyone could come up with certain questions they want?
There is a question. Would you like to address this right now? So someone asked, there are certain situations where your immediate senior in hierarchy may feel insecure by your presence, being triggered by their own insecurities. And due to this, they try to exclude you. This leads to your work being affected. How does one deal with these situations?
Seniors on the project at hand?
Yes. So I think what she means here is, when your immediate senior in a project, due to their own insecurities, starts excluding you in discussions about things that would happen the next day or that day in shoot, and this ends up, affecting your work.
So one thing is about being assertive also, is there, because you are aware that it's actually affecting you now, I think you should have a one-on-one discussion with your senior and actually express yourself and tell them that I would really love to be a part of this discussion, because somewhere I feel that I'm learning a lot from it, or being a part of it is really in a professional, on a professional basis, really helping me out. So actually asserting yourself over there in a very calm way would actually help the person also to understand that yes, she's aware of what I'm doing, and since she's aware, I need to also make her a part of it. And if it's not happening, then you tell them I'm going to be a part of it, because if this thing concerns the overall project also, then I need to be there. I need to be there, that's it, because I'm being a part of it. How can I be somewhere else? An understanding we have. So it's better to just go and talk about it, that please add me on the next time this happens. please do not exclude me, because excluding me actually robs me of certain things, and I really want to, really discuss it, understand it, learn something. So being very open with that is also very good. Then how the person responds with that is not your problem, or it's nothing about you, it's about them, because somewhere they also know that you want to be a part of it, and if they are not allowing you to be a part of it, then it's something about them, and you need to stand up for that, and you need to assert it, because if you don't do it, this thing also could continue for long. Then you are acknowledging being passive in this case, and there is nothing wrong with what you're feeling. Yes, feeling left out is really bad. Feeling this is not good actually, because it's also affecting you now also, like you can see. So just take a stand, talk to the person very calmly. I feel this because when this happens, could we really discuss it? Or could you tell me what was discussed then? You know, many times when your senior knows that you're coming up ahead and asking about what happened, even if she's excluded you for whatever reasons it is, then she's aware that you're going to come and ask about it. So she has to do a double work somewhere of even explaining what happened. Okay. So it's always good to be very honest, very to the point with her also. So she will also respect that if she is very understanding.
So Jane, would you like to conclude the first session?
Yes.